Hello everyone. In this lecture we will learn about overflow property in CSS. Overflow property specifies what needs to be done if the content is too big to fit into an element. Overflow property specifies whether to clip the content or to add scroll bars when the content of the element is too big to fit the specified area. So I'm in line number 16. Overflow property takes 4 different values: visible, hidden, scroll and auto. Let's look at it with an example. I'm going to create a div with some dummy content. Here in line number 18 we have a div with some dummy content. So let's style this div using internal CSS in line number, I'm in line number 9 here. Under style tag, I'm going to use div element selector. Okay, so we have styled this div element and I have given width as 200 pixels, height as 250 pixels and some background color. Let's save this file and go to the output. Here is the output. So let's open developer tools. And I'm going to make the background dark so that it will be obvious. So here, okay, we have the orange background. Fine. So can you see here the text is overflowing outside the div element, right? I'm highlighting this div element. We can see the height is set to 250 pixels. But since the content is more, it is overflowing out of this div element. By default, the overflow property will be set to visible, meaning that the text, overflowing text will not be clipped and it will be rendered outside the elements box, and that is what is happening now. Now let me go to CSS and I'll change this to orange and I'm going to include overflow property here and set the value to visible. Save. So I'm going to refresh the page. See, there is no difference, right? The overflow property is set to visible now, but the output is same. That is because overflow property is set to visible by default for all the block elements. Okay, so now let's change the overflow property value to hidden. I'm going to change this to hidden. Now we can see the overflowing text is clipped. We don't see the overflowing text outside, right? So this is how the hidden value, overflow with hidden value, it will behave. So it will clip the overflowing content and the overflowing text will be hidden. So next, scroll. Okay, let me, if I change this to scroll, I'm not able to scroll, right? Let me go to CSS and here I'm going to change it to scroll. Save and refresh. I'm closing the developer tools. Now we can see the scroll bar, right? We see scroll bar on both horizontal and vertical side, and we can scroll through and we can see the overflowing content. So that is how overflow set to scroll will behave. So overflowing text can be scrolled using the scroll bars and we can view the content. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the content a little bit. I'm just going to have a little content. I'm going to delete the rest of the content here. So now we have a single line. Now let's save this and go to the output. Okay, now I have only 2 lines of text here. Still here you can see on the horizontal and vertical side there is a space for the scroll bar. Even if the text inside the div is small, the scroll bars are visible. But the point here is, since the text is small, scroll bar is not needed, but still it appears, right? To avoid scroll bars when the text is small and to display scroll bar only when the text is big enough, we have to set the overflow property to auto, which is the next value. Let's change the scroll to auto and save. Now I'm refreshing the page. See, we don't see any scroll bar now. because the text is small and it is not overflowing, and we don't see any scroll bar now. Now let's make the text bigger. Okay, I'm making the text inside the div bigger. Save and going back to the output. Now we see scroll bar here, and this is what we want. That is, if we include more text inside div element, now scroll bar is visible, and if the text is small enough, the scroll bar is not needed, and in that case scroll bar is not visible. So the overflow set to auto will automatically determine whether scroll bar is needed or not. If the content overflows, it will make the scroll bar visible, or it will hide the scroll bar. Right? So overflow property takes 4 values: visible, which by default all the block elements are set to visible, and if it is visible, the content will overflow outside the element. We will be able to see the content outside the element. And then hidden, next value is hidden. Hidden means it will clip off the content if the content size is bigger than the element size. Third one is scroll. So the difference between scroll and auto is, if we use scroll, even if the content is less, scroll bar will be visible. Horizontal and vertical scroll bar will be visible even if the content is less. Whereas for overflow set to auto, scroll bar will be visible only when needed. If the content is big enough, scroll bar will be displayed, or else there will be no scroll bar. Right? There are 2 other variations of overflow property. They are overflow X and overflow Y. So if you want to specifically control the overflow horizontally and vertically, that is, I want to control the overflow only on the horizontal axis, then I use overflow X. And similarly, if you want to control the overflowing content on the vertical axis, then we have to use overflow Y. I want you to try using visible, hidden, scroll and auto values for overflow X and overflow Y, and let me know if you have any doubts. You can email me and you can ask your questions. So my email ID is in line number 19, designwebsolnssolutions@gmail.com. In this lecture we learnt about overflow property in CSS. In the next lecture we will look at float and clear property. Thank you for watching.